and that they can do it and that they want help. And I want to help them set their goals and achieve them. And I want them to know that they can do it. And I acknowledge that to them. I also tell them their education is something no one can ever take from them. I want to push them to give their best and to try. I'm going to talk about 3 people today who have helped me become a multiplier and led me to be a multiplier for others. I probably have more, we all do, but before the bigger things in my life right now, I'm going to share 3. I contribute who I am today to my mother. There are so many things that she used to say to me that still stick out in my head. She used to say, "You are the prettiest girl. You can do anything you want to do. You're also the smartest person in your class. You can be anything you want to be when you grow up." Well, who doesn't say this to their children, right? But honestly, not every person has this. If you did, you were lucky. I was lucky. Her famous last words are still today, "Be a leader, not a follower." I have taken almost all of these phrases and used them at some point in my life with others and with my students. I truly believe I was put on this earth to teach and to help my students and to be there for my family and friends. My mother's encouragement and advice growing up was something that I now use in my courses with my students to encourage, to engage, and to push them to be their best. I am visible every day in my course room. My mother, no matter what, was there for me and my brother every single day pushing us. So I do the same for my students. I was in pageants starting about the age of 4. So I was in the Miss Oklahoma system. I was Miss Alva. I made show choir every year. I cheered for 14 years. And this was not only what I wanted to do, but my mother was there cheering me on, pulling for me, telling me I could do it. I know now that each of these things helped me be the person that she wanted me to be, to have confidence, poise, be able to speak, make connections. My mother knew what she was doing. She knew that if I was going to have better than she had, that I needed to try everything. She told me that I can do anything in the world that I want to do, and I believed her. The first step in becoming a multiplier, as stated by Liz Wiseman, is to remember where you came from. Who helped you get to where you are in your life? With all of the things that my mother did great, I'll be honest, I didn't have help applying for my bachelor's degree, my master's degree, or even my doctorate degree. My mom would have tried, but she never went through those things, so that was completely unfamiliar to her. I paid for all of my schooling myself, and this is where those extracurriculars come in with scholarships. That's where the pageants and the cheerleadings came in. My mother knew what she was doing. I never wanted her to feel bad about not being able to help me, because I am where I am today because of what my multipliers have done for me, and that's pushed me to succeed. They all pushed me to at least try. Not everyone has that. And that is something that we have to remember. So next, Wiseman has explained in accelerator number 2 is work the extremes. This means you do not have to excel at everything, but by having one major strength, just for example, building relationships, that makes you distinguished in the eyes of your students. That stands out to them. When I was a classroom teacher, I was very fortunate to have a great principal. He was always pushing me to do more and be more. And I always thought, okay, why not try? Because of his leadership, I became more than I ever thought I would. He told me that he saw that leadership ability in me, which Wiseman explained in working the extremes. He let me take lead at the school when he was gone because I had my administrator's certificate. He then pushed me to become the gifted and talented teacher, and then ultimately a principal. He was always trying to advance me in what I was doing. Good leaders do this, but you know what? Good teachers do it best. And he is another multiplier in my life. I want my students to have everything they dream of. I want them to accomplish all of their goals, just like my principal wanted for me. I want to push them to think of more. I want them to have a growth mindset. And I try to give them the tools in my courses to always be one step ahead. Because I think back to my first principal and my mother. What were the things they were doing to push me? What did they do or say to help me along the way? And then I think, how did they encourage me to try? I am always looking to do one more thing. I didn't know when I was a pre-K teacher that I wanted a doctorate degree. And I tell my students all the time, when you start your master's degree, you're going to want to know this. Or when you start working on your doctorate degree, it's good that you may understand this. I want them to be looking forward. I want them to set that goal in their mind. I want them to know that they can do it if they set their mind to it, and they will do it. Some tell me they had never even thought about what the next step was going to be until I mentioned it. And now that they were excited about what their next education adventure is going to be. My multipliers have helped me get so far in life. I appreciate them so much. They let me try, and they pushed me to do things that were out of my comfort zone. Now, looking back to my reading, Wiseman's accelerator number 3 is run the experiment. This means trying new approaches, testing behaviors, analyzing feedback, adjusting, and repeating. My colleague and I, Dr. Stephanie Hild, are always running the experiment. About 6 years ago, I went to Dr. Tony Farrell, our dean, and asked him about hosting an early childhood conference. We were in San Diego at the pizza place that we all love to go. I made sure I got a seat right beside him. And I asked him, you know what? He surprised me and he said, go for it. Because you know what? Multipliers let you try. Tony, let me try. Now, after adjusting, listening, and producing successful outcomes, as Wiseman states in the book, we just finished our 5th year, and Stephanie and I have made it into a conference that has participants from all over the world. We have people reaching out to us that want to present. We have even taken small steps along the way and created an entire learning community that involves a student club, year-long speakers, a YouTube channel, early childhood website, and our newest thing, our early childhood podcast. The support here has helped me and my team become multipliers. Steph and I are always looking for the next thing that will help our students to reach their full potential, to give them things they may be in need of, to be that voice for them, to push them to do their best and be better. Without the multiplier effect, I don't know that we would have ever achieved the level we are at now. So that brings me to accelerator number 4, which is brace yourself for setbacks. I have definitely worked for diminishers, and I'm sure we all have, but I don't love talking about how I felt or what it did to my sense of self. So think about our students. When we diminish them through a comment on their paper or not giving them the feedback that they need to do better, how does that make them feel? Though working for a diminisher couldn't keep me down for long because I had my mother's voice in my head telling me that I can do it and get to work, those diminishers have a lasting effect on who we are. If we diminish our students, we have that lasting effect. So who is that voice in your head telling you to stay strong, that you can do it? We have to be that voice for our students because, again, not everyone has that. Not every student comes from that type of environment. So we have to be our students' multiplier. The truth is, when you work with really great people, you don't have to be perfect or fabulous at everything. Dr. Hild and I are good at different things. We balance each other out. We both have goals and use our strengths to make what we do successful. And that brings me to Wiseman's number 5 accelerator, which is ask a colleague. And isn't that why we're here today? To learn from each other? And honestly, in my mind, we're not only teachers. If my mom, my principal, and Dr. Farrell did not give me the strength and ability to have a positive outlook and to know I could do anything I set my mind to, I may not be here today, be able to share these stories with you. I think sometimes that all we need is someone that will support, encourage, and even make us do things that get us out of our comfort zone, that make us have that growth mindset and that allow us to multiply and try. I challenge you to push your students, share with them who you are, why you do what you do, and why you're here for them. Where did you come from? Our students have the same backgrounds as we do. They want what's best for their children and their family, and we must support that. I am never going to say I haven't been or will again be a diminisher. Last month in Dr. Jackie Kiger's Ed Talk, he spoke about how many of us just avoid diminishers. We don't want our students to avoid us. Rather, we want them to come to us. My mom started her life on a farm where she worked tirelessly for her dad, who wasn't really a multiplier at all. She ended up working many jobs, oftentimes more than one at a time, while raising me and my brother, and does what she does now, and she loves owning her own beauty salon. My elementary principal, he shared with me that he and his wife started out with date nights when they were very young and poor, cooking meals in their fireplace. And he ended up being my administrator and someone that was very successful. Dr. Farrell has a very similar story to mine with his mother and how he grew up, and he is now pushing others to multiply. We can identify with our students and where they come from, but what are we doing to make them better? How are we supporting them? We have to not only be a multiplier for them, but help them become a multiplier for others. Jackie, back to you.
Next slide, please. Gosh, Tisha. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for sharing your mother. It's very personal. Sharing your mother with us today. And her story of love, hope, and joy in circumstances that often left doubt and unknowing situations in the early days of being that single parent, working those two jobs to provide for you and your brother. In your story, it's clear to me that you have a big heart for your students. And I think we know where you get that big heart. You look for situations that build hope, joy, and yes, even love for them in your classroom. We appreciate you sharing how exciting a trip to the bowling alley can be in splitting an order of French fries with probably an otherwise difficult little brother. As I listened to you, I did think about your mom, and I wondered what this same story might sound like if your mother came here and gave an Ed Talk. She prepared for and protected her family from a flood of doubt, a wave of unknowing in a sea of what was very likely one of despair. But yes, she found extra money for French fries during a time when there really was no extra money. She likely went to bed hungry, but not before giving her best performance of her life on a stage in her kitchen to an audience that was her children. That no, she was not hungry. And you kids, go ahead and eat. My favorite part about this story was that she never stopped believing in what was possible. And at that kitchen table, she painted ideas and hopes of a future that could be yours. And now here you are, living that future, paving that way in the way of opportunity in your classroom for your students. Wiseman has spent a whole book on what it takes to be a good multiplier for others. We have spent a whole year in Ed Talks on multipliers. And as we listen to Tisha today, she took all that, she broke it down into one simple consideration. And that is be parental in your approach to how you approach and interact with your students. Students need hopeful opportunities in joyous settings that are built out of love. Love? Yes, love. If we do not love what we do as educators and create environments for students to also love that learning experience, perhaps we need to rethink. Perhaps I need to rethink my teaching. Is it really reaching? Because we must start with self. It takes me back to these questions that Tisha shared with us at the beginning of her talk regarding self. Consider that. Do I let my students truly try? And who has been my role model, my go model? We chose go model because we meet a lot of people, but we only meet a few people that truly motivate us. We've heard from 3 that have impacted Tisha today. And what happens when I assume? Does it get in the way of what could be my best teaching, my best reaching? So thank you, Tisha, for reminding us of all of these things. Audience members, we invite you to consider and share in the chat, but we would also love to hear from you. To share with us using your audio, simply raise your hand using the hand icon on the bottom of your screen. You'll then be given the opportunity to unmute your microphone and share your story or your reflection with us. We invite you to join the conversation to inspire others with your story.
Here, Jackie, Michelle shared that she had somebody in her undergrad social psych professor program that really encouraged her. And that's a reason that she went to grad school. I think that we have to encourage our students for their next step, because like me, I did not know, I didn't have that environment that brought me up to know what the next thing was going to be. So we need to encourage them. After their bachelor's, they can start their master's, or they can start their doctorate. They can do whatever they want to do. And we're here to help them. And so I think that's so important. So thank you for sharing that, Michelle.
Absolutely. And it's, you know, the course, we said this before, the course is going to teach the curriculum. We're going to facilitate that curriculum, and where we make that big difference is in putting ourselves as educators in that position where, I don't mean it selfishly, but where we become remembered for that endeavor. You know, my favorite thing when we get to attend face-to-face graduation is when students slowly realize, oh, that's all those faculty standing over there were my faculty. And then you see those relationships come as a result of that.
I'd like to know too in the chat, who's somebody that helped you get to where you are today? We all have those people and we know them in our head. And you might be that person for one of your students. My parents have been my go models. They were simple farmers, but so positive and encouraging. Tanya, I can completely identify with you. I say my mom, but I have an entire family that has backed me and supported me my entire life. And they say it takes a village to raise a child. And, you know, but again, not all of our students have that. And so if we can share our story with them and help encourage them, that builds that great relationship.
Absolutely. And remind everybody, please use your chat feature. And then also, if you'd like to use the microphone, the way we manage that now is just with you raising your virtual hand, and then we giving you that access. And we do that so that we don't talk over one another and everybody has that opportunity.
Cindy shared her husband. I also have an amazing husband that's also my cheerleader, Cindy. So I can totally identify with that. So encouraging. And when you have that partner and that friend, it helps you just achieve a little bit more. John shared his high school coach. I love that. We all have a lot of coaches and teachers in our lives that really shaped us to who we are. And we have to remember that when we were in public school or when we were working out in the field, we were somebody's role model at some point. And hopefully they still remember who we are, or maybe you're still in touch with them. So thank you for sharing.
one of the things that I enjoy doing in my first in-course, when students show up to be that graduate student and take that, I remind them of, what this truly does mean in the way of your time management and things of that nature. But one of the things I tell them is to tell everyone you're a graduate student. And I kind of go off on a ramble about it to the point of, tell the barista at Starbucks that you see every day. Let them know what you're doing, because with that, you create this following of people who check in with you and end up supporting you, that in corners and places that you wouldn't necessarily know that it's going to come from. And then I also tell them that so that what you're doing here stays front and center to your goals and obtaining, in that case, that graduate degree.
And I find it kind of backwards from that. Like when I go into a store or a Starbucks or anywhere, I start talking to the person helping me. And I always say, are you going to school? What's your degree? What's your aspiration? And it is so cool. And of course, my husband's sitting there rolling his eyes, but they want to tell you what they're doing. And they want you to be excited for them. And yesterday I was actually doing this, and this girl just said, well, thank you for encouraging me. And, I wasn't even really encouraging her. I just wanted her to be her best self. And I wanted to make sure that she knew she could get through it. She has 2 years left. So Michelle shared with us that her husband, again, he said he has the family, and you go do this. There are many nights of tears through a doctorate degree. I agree with you. And then Angela shared her mom was definitely her go model. Okay. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that story. Her father passed away when she was 3 months, and her mother raised her. If anyone was raised with a single mom, it's different just having that one parent in your household, but it's not something that I would ever change. We don't know any different, right?
I lost my real father when I was an infant, so it was pretty rough on my mom. And I was fortunate, though, that my mom remarried and we were provided for and things of that nature, and life took a more positive turn. But it's these things that I don't think about in my life now that I absolutely know was devastating for my mom back at the time and in that moment. So yeah, and I guess maybe that's why your story resonated with me. I'm a mama's boy. I'm here today because of Wanda the cook. My mom cooked in a hospital forever.
Yeah, we all have that person. And Barbara shared her dad was an educator who would bring children home for a good home cooked meal. And so her mom always made extra food. I love that. And there were people that I worked with that always wanted to take kids home with them and feed them. I always told them nobody would want to come home and eat my food, but I love that.
I appreciate, Yulia just put in the chat that she just realized how important it is to be that person, that faculty that pushes and encourages, and that she tries to encourage her students to work on their state certificates and things of that nature while they're in that capstone class with her. And that's rich. And thank you for that realization, and then for doing that. My wife is a retired elementary school teacher, and Friday she's having lunch with one of her fifth graders who is now an adult that reached out to her. And she was telling me about the conversation she was going to have about the power of Pell Grants and how to use them. And I'm like, well, she's back into her mode. She's doing what educators do. So it's
all about helping others. And when I mentioned in my talk about being visible in my classroom every day, I log in every single morning, and then one more time before bed. And I log into my room and in my email. And I'm not saying that you have to do that, but I make sure that they have an announcement every day from me. And it doesn't have to be resources. It can be something that says, "Happy Monday. I am so glad you're here. It is great getting to know you." And then an inspirational quote or song. And I've had more feedback on that in my evaluations than almost anything else. Just being there and being visible and showing them that I'm real and just pushing them and encouraging them, because they need that. They really do.
And Kelly reminds us that everyone does have a story. And I just love that Kelly is reminding us of that, because Kelly has great stories, and I'll not get into her stories, but it has something to do with a van and a nun. And so at some point you guys can email Kelly and ask her about that, because my wife still reference, who was that? And I'll say, it's Kelly. And she'll go, who? And I'll go, the girl that told the story about the van and the nun. So there you have it. You make the impacts.
Thank you, Dr. Reef. I appreciate that. I also, since COVID started, I started doing at least one Zoom meeting. I try to do it towards the beginning of class, but it is amazing to me how many have asked for more and how many come. And I don't know if it's because of COVID and they're just used to getting on Zoom now, but they want to meet with you. They want to hear your ideas. They want to know your stories. And I think that's important, because I remember sitting in a college class. I wanted to hear what my teacher knew. What can she tell me? What can she share with me? And so it's pretty exciting to be that person.
Absolutely is. And I appreciate it. And I want to value everybody's time too. And thank you for sharing in here. And, well, with that, all good things here, certainly they do come to an end, and we need to do that now. And when I say we come to an end, we're going to be wrapping up our multiplier series with you all. So please, I'm going to go ahead and put in the chat so that I don't forget the certificate. You can take that with you today. It's suitable for framing, and I encourage you to do so. So please watch in the chat for that link for the Ed Talks homepage, where the certificate and recordings, and this will be recorded as well for future viewing along with certificate participation. You'll find that link also there. We want to acknowledge the work of Liz Wiseman and the Multiplier book for the inspiration of not only today's Ed Talk, but for the entire year of the Dell's Professional Development Series of Ed Talks. I'd like to thank all of our, next slide, please. I'd like to thank all of our 2021 storytellers. And as a reminder, their names and photos are here on the screen. We hope you enjoyed them, and we would encourage you to review the recordings of any that you may have missed, and review them again if you have seen them, as we move into the holiday season and wrap up 2021. We will see you next year, as the Dell Professional Development Committee has already started working on a potential theme around the idea of the power of one. So please be watching in your email for more Ed Talk invites. Next slide, please. As we will kick off what will be our 9th year in beginning in 2022. Next slide. So on behalf of the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences, Dr. Tony Farrell, and your friends here in the Department of Education and Liberal Arts at the University of Arizona Global Campus, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we'll see you at Ed Talks next year.